Rain drummed against the apartment windows as Lisa packed up her laptop for another late night at the office. She had been working as a freelance graphic designer for 3 years now, and clients always seemed to want their projects finished yesterday. Her small one-bedroom apartment felt more like a storage unit than a home these days, filled with art supplies, computer equipment, and empty coffee cups. As she grabbed her keys and headed toward the door, a strange sound stopped her in her tracks. It was barely audible over the rain, but something was crying outside. Lisa paused. Listening carefully, there it was again, a tiny, desperate meowing sound coming from somewhere near the building. She should have ignored it. Lisa had always been practical about these things. Pets meant responsibility, vet bills, and less freedom to work the crazy hours her business demanded. She had her life planned out, and a pet definitely wasn't part of that plan. But the crying continued, and something about the sound tugged at her heart in a way she couldn't ignore. Grabbing an old raincoat from the closet, Lisa stepped outside into the chilly October evening. The rain was coming down harder now, creating small rivers along the sidewalk. She followed the sound around to the back of her building, where the garbage containers sat in a small alcove. That's when she saw her. Behind the large green dumpster, pressed against the brick wall, was the tiniest kitten Lisa had ever seen. The little creature was soaking wet, her fur matted against her small body, making her look even smaller than she actually was. What struck Lisa most were the kitten's eyes. One was bright green, the other crystal blue. It was like looking at two different cats at the same time. The kitten looked up at Lisa with those mismatched eyes, letting out another pitiful cry. She was shivering so hard that her whole body shook, and Lisa could see she was barely old enough to be away from her mother. There was no sign of any other cats around, no indication that someone was looking for her. Lisa knelt down slowly, not wanting to scare the little thing. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The kitten didn't run away. Instead, she took a wobbly step forward, as if she somehow knew that help had finally arrived. Lisa gently reached out her hand, and the kitten immediately pressed against her fingers, purring despite her obvious distress. "Oh no," Lisa whispered, feeling her practical resolve melting away. "You can't stay out here. You'll freeze." She looked around, hoping to see someone searching for a lost pet, but the parking lot was empty. The rain was getting worse, and the temperature was dropping. Lisa knew she couldn't leave this tiny creature outside overnight before she could change her mind. Lisa scooped up the kitten, tucking her inside her raincoat. The little thing was so light, she felt like she might blow away in the wind against her chest. Lisa could feel the kitten's tiny heart beating rapidly, and the grateful purring that started immediately. Back inside her apartment, Lisa set the kitten down on her bathroom counter and really got her first good look at her unexpected visitor. The little cat was mostly white with patches of orange and black scattered across her fur, like paint splatters on an artist's canvas. On her forehead was a perfect heart-shaped patch of orange fur that made her look like she was wearing a tiny costume. "Well, aren't you something special?" Lisa said, grabbing a soft towel to gently dry the kitten's wet fur. The kitten submitted to the toweling with patience that seemed remarkable for such a young animal. She kept looking up at Lisa with those extraordinary eyes, as if she was trying to communicate something important. When Lisa finished drying her off, the kittens were fluffed up, making her look like a tiny cotton ball with legs. Lisa realized she had no idea what to do next. She had never owned a pet before, not even a goldfish. Her childhood had been spent moving from apartment to apartment with her single mother, and pets had always been out of the question. Now, at 28, she found herself completely clueless about kitten care. A quick internet search told her that the kitten needed food, water, and a warm place to sleep. Lisa didn't have any cat supplies, but she improvised with a shallow dish of water and some leftover chicken from her dinner. The kitten ate hungrily, confirming Lisa's suspicion that she had been on her own for a while. For a bed, Lisa found a medium-sized cardboard box that had held her new printer. She lined it with the softest towels she could find and placed it In the corner of her bedroom, away from any drafts, the setup looked cozy and warm. Exactly the kind of safe space a tiny kitten would need. The kitten explored her new environment with a curiosity, typical of young cats, sniffing everything and testing her surroundings. She seemed particularly fascinated by Lisa's art supplies, batting at loose pencils and investigating the various papers scattered around the apartment. As the evening wore on, Lisa found herself watching the kitten with growing affection. There was something about the little creature's spirit that amazed her. Despite being abandoned and caught in a storm, the kitten showed no fear, only gratitude and playfulness. She seemed to trust Lisa completely, following her around the apartment and purring whenever Lisa spoke to her. "I guess you need a name," Lisa said, sitting on the floor and letting the kitten climb into her lap. "What should I call you?" The kitten looked up at her with those mismatched eyes, and Lisa was struck by how each eye seemed to tell a different story. The green eye looked wise and knowing, while the blue eye sparkled with mischief and adventure. It reminded Lisa of her own work, how she built complex designs from tiny individual elements, each one important to the final picture. "How about Pixel?" Lisa asked. "Like the little dots that make up all my digital art. Each one is small by itself, but together they create something beautiful." The kitten seemed to approve, purring louder and settling more comfortably in Lisa's lap. As bedtime approached, Lisa gently placed Pixel in her new cardboard bed, making sure she had everything she needed. The towels were soft and warm, and the box was positioned where Pixel could see Lisa's bed but still feel secure in her own space. "Good night, little one," Lisa whispered, turning off the lights. What happened next would change both their lives forever. That first night, Lisa learned something important about her new roommate. Pixel had very strong opinions about sleeping arrangements, and she wasn't afraid to share them. Lisa had barely closed her eyes when the crying started. It wasn't the same desperate meowing from outside in the rain. This was different, more demanding, more purposeful. It was the sound of a kitten who knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't going to give up. Until she got it done at first, Lisa tried to ignore it. She pulled her pillow over her head and told herself that Pixel just needed time to adjust. All pets had to learn boundaries, right? The crying would stop eventually, and Pixel would settle into her cozy cardboard bed. But the crying didn't stop. If anything, it got louder and more insistent. Lisa could hear tiny paws scratching against the cardboard, and the sound of Pixel trying to climb out of her box. After 20 minutes of nonstop protests, Lisa gave up and turned on her bedside. Lamped out there was Pixel, sitting right next to the cardboard box, looking up at Lisa's bed with those mismatched eyes. The moment she saw Lisa looking at her, Pixel let out another cry and took a few steps toward the bed. "Oh no, little one," Lisa said firmly. "This is my bed, and that's your bed. We each have our own space." Pixel tilted her head to one side, as if she was considering this arrangement. Then she sat down and began to cry again. Louder than before, Lisa tried everything she could think of. She moved the cardboard box closer to her bed, thinking maybe Pixel just wanted to be nearer. The crying continued. She added more towels to make the box softer, still crying. She even tried placing one of her worn t-shirts in the box, hoping her scent would be comforting. Nothing worked. After an hour of this back and forth, Lisa was exhausted. She had to work the next day, and the client meeting she had scheduled was too important to mess up because of a sleepless night. Against her better judgment, she reached down and picked up the tiny kitten. "Okay, just for tonight," she said, placing Pixel gently on the bed beside her. But this is not going to become a habit. The change in Pixel was immediate. The crying stopped, replaced by the loudest purring Lisa had ever heard from such a small creature. Pixel circled around on the soft comforter a few times, then settled down right against Lisa's side, tucking herself into the curve of Lisa's waist like she belonged there. Lisa expected to have trouble sleeping with a kitten on her bed, but the opposite happened. The gentle purring was incredibly soothing, and the warmth of the small body next to her was surprisingly comforting. She fell asleep faster than she had in weeks. The next morning, Lisa woke up to find Pixel still in exactly the same position, curled up against her side. The kitten opened those mismatched eyes and began purring again immediately, as if she was saying good morning. This was just for one night, Lisa reminded her as she got ready for work. Tonight you sleep in your own bed. But Pixel had other plans. That evening, the same drama played out all over again. As soon as Lisa placed Pixel in her cardboard box and turned off the lights, the crying began. This time, Lisa tried to be stronger. She put on headphones and played music, determined to wait it out. Pixel was more determined. The kitten discovered she could climb out of the box and make her way across the room to Lisa's bed. Lisa would wake up to find tiny paws batting at her blankets and a small face peering up at her from the floor. When Lisa would put her back in the box, Pixel would wait exactly 3 minutes before climbing out again and making the journey back to the bed. This went on for hours. By the third night, Lisa was starting to understand something about her new companion. This wasn't just stubborn behavior or spoiled cat attitude. There was something deeper going on. When Pixel cried from her box, there was a note of genuine distress in her voice. That broke Lisa's heart. When she was allowed on the bed, she didn't sprawl out or take up space like Lisa expected. Instead, she seemed to need the physical contact, the reassurance that she wasn't alone. Lisa started to wonder about Pixel's early life. Had she been separated from her mother too early? Had she spent cold, frightening nights alone before Lisa found her? Maybe this need for closeness came from a place of fear and insecurity rather than simple preference. The fourth night, Lisa made a decision. Instead of going through the usual bedtime battle, she simply patted the spot next to her on the bed. "Come on up, Pixel," she said. The kitten needed no second invitation. She leaped onto the bed with surprising grace for such a tiny creature and immediately claimed her spot against Lisa's side. But even this wasn't quite right according to Pixel's standards. The little kitten spent several minutes arranging herself, trying different positions until she found the perfect one. She needed to be touching Lisa at all times, not just nearby, but actually making physical contact. If Lisa's arm wasn't positioned just right, Pixel would gently paw at it until Lisa adjusted. If Lisa tried to roll away during the night, she would wake up to find Pixel had followed her, maintaining their connection. Lisa's friends thought she was crazy when she told them about the sleeping arrangements. "You're letting a cat run your life." Her best friend Rachel laughed when she heard the story. "Just put her in another room and let her cry it out. She'll learn eventually." But Lisa found she didn't want to fight it anymore. There was something sweet about Pixel's need to be close, something that spoke to a loneliness Lisa hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. Working alone all day, coming home to an empty apartment, she was starting to understand that maybe Pixel wasn't the only one who didn't like sleeping alone. The cardboard box sat empty in the corner of the bedroom, eventually becoming a storage spot for Pixel's growing collection of toys. The bed, Lisa's queen-sized bed that had once seemed perfectly adequate for one person, had somehow become the ideal size for two very different roommates who had found exactly what they both needed. But Pixel's sleeping preferences were just getting started. As the weeks went by, Lisa would discover that her new companion had very specific ideas about temperature, positioning, and bedtime routines that would transform their nighttime ritual into something far more complex than she could have ever imagined. As weeks turned into months, Lisa realized she had seriously underestimated her tiny roommate. Pixel wasn't just a cat who liked sleeping on the bed. She was a sleep scientist, with very specific research requirements that had to be met before any actual resting could happen. It started with the position requirements. Lisa discovered that Pixel had strong opinions about how humans should arrange themselves for optimal sleeping conditions. If Lisa tried to sleep on her back, Pixel would pace around the bed in small circles, meowing her disapproval. She would walk across Lisa's chest, sit on her stomach, and generally make it clear that this position was completely unacceptable. Sleeping on her stomach was even worse. Pixel would climb onto Lisa's back and sit there like a tiny, purring backpack, but not in a comfortable way. She would shift around, digging her little claws gently into Lisa's pajamas, and make small complaining sounds until Lisa gave up and rolled to her side. Side sleeping. That was Pixel's preferred human position. But not just any side sleeping. Lisa had to be on her left side, with her arm positioned at exactly the right angle to create what Pixel apparently considered the perfect cat-sized nook. Once Lisa was arranged properly, Pixel would test the space by circling around it several times, like a tiny inspector checking that everything was up to code. If the arm position was wrong, even by a few inches, Pixel would reject the entire setup. She had a very specific way of showing her disapproval. She would sit just out of reach and stare at Lisa with those mismatched eyes, occasionally letting out a small, disappointed sigh. It was surprisingly effective at making Lisa feel like she had failed some important test. The temperature requirements were equally precise. Lisa's apartment had always run a bit cool, which she preferred for sleeping. But Pixel had different ideas about the ideal bedroom climate. If it was too cold, she would burrow under the covers, creating a small tent with her body, and Lisa would wake up to find her sheets pulled in all directions. Pixel would emerge from her blanket fort looking disheveled, her fur sticking up at odd angles, making it clear that the temperature situation was completely unacceptable. But too warm was just as bad. On nights when Lisa tried turning up the heat to accommodate her feline roommate, Pixel would sprawl dramatically across the bed, stretching out as far as her small body would allow. She would lie on her back with her paws in the air, breathing heavily in the most theatrical way possible. The message was clear: this is too hot, and everyone is suffering because of your poor climate management. Finding the exact right temperature became a nightly challenge. Lisa invested in a small space heater for really cold nights and a fan for when the apartment got stuffy. She found herself checking the thermostat multiple times before bed, trying to hit that perfect temperature sweet spot that would earn Pixel's approval. But temperature and positioning were just the beginning of Pixel's bedtime protocol. Lisa soon discovered that timing mattered too. Pixel expected bedtime to happen at exactly the same time every night. If Lisa tried to stay up late working, Pixel would come and sit next to her computer, staring pointedly at the clock and then at the bedroom door. If the silent treatment didn't work, Pixel would start her bedtime crying routine right there in the office area, making it impossible for Lisa to concentrate. On the flip side, if Lisa tried to go to bed early, Pixel wasn't ready to cooperate. She would stay in the living room, playing with her toys or staring out the window, completely ignoring Lisa's calls to come to bed. Pixel had determined that 10:30 p.m. was the optimal bedtime, and she stuck to this schedule with the dedication of a Swiss watchmaker. The bedtime routine itself became increasingly elaborate. First, Pixel needed to do her security rounds. She would patrol the entire apartment, checking that all windows were properly closed and that no dangerous dust bunnies had invaded during the day. This inspection could take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how many suspicious shadows needed investigating. Next came the snack requirement. Pixel didn't need much, just a few pieces of her kibble and a small drink of water. But it had to happen at exactly the right moment in the routine. Too early, and she would ignore the food completely. Too late, and she would sit by her empty bowl, looking betrayed and abandoned. After the security patrol and the snack, Pixel would jump onto the bed and begin what Lisa came to think of as the fluffing ceremony. Like a tiny interior designer, Pixel would walk around the entire surface of the bed, testing different spots by lying down briefly, then getting up and trying somewhere else. She would paw at the blankets, rearranging them to her satisfaction, and occasionally look over at Lisa as if asking for input on her design choices. Only after all these requirements were met would Pixel settle into her chosen position for the night, but even then, the process wasn't complete. She needed exactly 3 minutes of petting. Not 2, not 5, but precisely 3 minutes of Lisa's hand gently stroking her fur. Lisa knew the time was up when Pixel would give a small, satisfied sigh and curl into a perfect circle against Lisa's side. Friends who came to visit were amazed by the complexity of the whole operation. Lisa's sister Amy watched the entire bedtime routine one evening and laughed until she had tears in her eyes. "I've never seen anything like this," Amy said. "She's got you more trained than any circus animal. You know that, right?" Lisa couldn't argue with that assessment. She had indeed become highly trained in the art of pixel management. She knew exactly how to position her arm, precisely what temperature to set the thermostat, and the exact timing for each part of their elaborate bedtime dance. But here's what surprised Lisa most. She didn't mind it at all. In fact, she had started to look forward to their nightly routine. After days filled with demanding clients, difficult deadlines, and the general stress of freelance life, there was something deeply comforting about having a ritual that was completely focused on comfort and connection. The routine forced Lisa to slow down, to pay attention to small details, and to prioritize rest in a way she never had before. Pixel had essentially created a meditation practice disguised as bedtime fussiness. And Lisa was beginning to realize that maybe her tiny roommate was onto something important about the art of truly restful sleep. What started as Lisa giving into a demanding kitten slowly became something she couldn't imagine living without. The change happened so gradually that she didn't notice it at first. But somewhere between the elaborate bedtime routines and the precise sleeping arrangements, something beautiful had begun to grow. It was during one of the most stressful periods of Lisa's freelance career that she first realized how much Pixel's presence had become essential to her well-being. A major client had decided they wanted to completely redesign their entire brand identity just 2 weeks before their product launch. This meant Lisa was pulling 18-hour workdays, surviving on coffee and determination, barely sleeping 3 hours a night when she finally collapsed into bed. During these exhausting weeks, Pixel seemed to sense that something was wrong with their usual routine. Instead of her normal demands for perfect positioning and temperature control, she became remarkably adaptable. When Lisa would finally drag herself to bed at 2 in the morning, too tired to go through the usual arrangement process, Pixel would quietly adjust to whatever position Lisa fell into. But more than that, Pixel seemed to become extra attentive during this difficult time. She would stay closer to Lisa throughout the day, settling on the desk beside her laptop while she worked, or curling up on the chair next to Lisa's workspace. It was like having a tiny, furry supervisor who was genuinely concerned about her human's well-being. The most remarkable thing happened on the worst night of the entire project. Lisa had been working for nearly 20 hours straight, trying to meet an impossible deadline. Her eyes were burning from staring at the computer screen. Her shoulders ached from hunching over her desk, and she was starting to feel that overwhelming anxiety that comes from being completely overwhelmed. When she finally made it to bed that night, her mind was racing with all the work still left to do. Even though she was physically exhausted, her brain wouldn't shut off. She kept thinking about color schemes and font choices and client feedback, cycling through the same worries over and over again. That's when Pixel did something she had never done before. Instead of settling into her usual spot against Lisa's side, Pixel climbed up and positioned herself directly over Lisa's heart. She was very deliberate about it, like she knew exactly what she was doing. Then she began to purr, but not her normal contented purring. This was deeper, more rhythmic, almost like she was trying to create a specific sound frequency. The effect was immediate and surprising. Lisa could feel the gentle vibrations of Pixel's purring against her chest, and somehow it began to slow down her racing thoughts. The steady rhythm was like a natural meditation soundtrack, and Lisa found her breathing beginning to match the pattern of Pixel's purring. For the first time in days, Lisa's mind began to quiet. The anxiety that had been building up in her chest started to dissolve, replaced by a sense of calm that seemed to radiate from the small, warm body positioned over her heart. Within minutes, she was asleep, and she slept more peacefully that night than she had in weeks. When Lisa woke up the next morning, Pixel was still in the same position, as if she had been standing guard over Lisa's sleep all night long. The stress of the project was still there, but somehow it felt manageable now. Lisa realized that Pixel hadn't just been seeking comfort from her human. She had been providing it too. This experience completely changed how Lisa understood their relationship. What she had initially seen as Pixel's neediness, she now recognized as a form of emotional intelligence that was far more sophisticated than she had given her credit for. Pixel wasn't just a pet who happened to like sleeping on the bed. She was a companion who could sense Lisa's emotional state and respond to it in ways that were genuinely helpful. Lisa began to pay more attention to these moments of connection. She noticed that on days when she came home frustrated from difficult client meetings, Pixel would be extra affectionate, purring louder than usual and staying closer to Lisa throughout the evening. When Lisa was feeling lonely or isolated after long days of working alone, Pixel would seek out more physical contact, positioning herself where she could maintain that reassuring touch that both of them seemed to need. The sleeping arrangements that had once seemed like elaborate cat demands now felt like a nightly ritual of mutual care. Lisa realized that she had been getting as much comfort from the routine as Pixel was. The gentle weight of Pixel's body against her side had become a signal to her nervous system that it was safe to relax, that she wasn't alone, that someone cared whether she slept well or not. Friends and family started to comment on the change in Lisa. Her sister Amy mentioned that Lisa seemed calmer, less anxious about work pressures. Her friend Rachel noticed that Lisa was sleeping better and seemed more centered overall. When they asked what had changed, Lisa would just smile and say that she had learned the value of good sleep habits, but it was more than that, and Lisa knew it. Pixel had taught her something fundamental about the importance of connection and physical comfort that she had been missing her entire adult life. Growing up, Lisa had learned to be independent and self-sufficient, to handle everything on her own. She had been proud of her ability to live alone, work alone, and manage her life without depending on anyone else. Pixel had gently challenged that entire worldview. She had shown Lisa that needing comfort and companionship wasn't weakness. It was a natural part of being a living creature. The desire for closeness and physical connection was something to be honored, not overcome. Lisa began to understand that what made their bed the perfect size wasn't the dimensions of the mattress. It was the fact that it contained exactly the right amount of love and care and mutual support. They had created a space where both of them felt safe, valued, and genuinely connected to another living being. The practical woman who had never planned to have a pet had discovered something that no amount of professional success could provide: the deep satisfaction of being truly needed by someone who also provided exactly what she needed in return. 2 years later, Lisa couldn't remember what sleeping alone had felt like. The elaborate bedtime routines that had once seemed so demanding had become the most treasured part of her day. Every evening, as she watched Pixel begin her security patrol of the apartment, Lisa would find herself smiling at the familiar ritual that marked the transition from work mode to rest mode. Pixel had grown from that tiny, shivering kitten into a beautiful, confident cat, but her sleeping preferences had remained exactly the same. She still required the precise positioning, the perfect temperature, and the same 3 minutes of bedtime petting. If anything, she had become even more particular about the details. Like a master craftsperson who had perfected her art over years of practice. The biggest test of their sleeping arrangement came when Lisa's business grew successful enough that she could finally afford to move to a larger apartment. The new place was everything she had dreamed of: a spacious 2-bedroom with huge windows, plenty of room for her expanding home office, and a master bedroom that was nearly twice the size of her old one. All of her friends assumed that Lisa would upgrade to a king-size bed to match the bigger space. The furniture store salesperson was particularly enthusiastic about showing her the latest king-size models, explaining how much more room she would have to spread out and how much more comfortable she would be. But as Lisa stood in the showroom, looking at those enormous beds, all she could think about was Pixel's reaction to so much empty space. Her cat had spent 2 years perfecting the art of sleeping on a queen-size bed. She knew exactly how many steps it took to walk from one side to the other. precisely where the most comfortable spots were located, and exactly how to arrange herself to maintain contact with Lisa. Throughout the night, more importantly, Lisa realized she didn't want more space. The queen-size bed had become their bed, and it was exactly the right size for their nightly ritual. Why would she want to sleep farther away from the small, warm presence that had become such an essential part of her rest and peace of mind? When the salesperson asked what size bed she was looking for, Lisa surprised herself by saying, "Actually, I'd like to look at queen-size beds. I want to find one that matches what I already have." That evening, as she told Pixel about their upcoming move, Lisa could swear her cat looked relieved. "Don't worry," Lisa said, scratching behind Pixel's ears. "We're not changing anything important. Just getting you a bigger apartment to patrol." The move itself was stressful for both of them, but Lisa made sure to set up the bedroom first, arranging everything exactly as it had been in the old place. The bed went in the same relative position. The temperature was adjusted to Pixel's preferred setting, and even the lighting was arranged to match their old routine. On their first night in the new apartment, Lisa watched nervously as Pixel began her inspection routine. Would the new space throw off their carefully developed system? Would Pixel need time to adjust to different acoustics and unfamiliar shadows? But Pixel approached the new bedroom with the confidence of a seasoned expert. She conducted her security patrol with professional thoroughness, checking all the corners and investigating the new closet space. She tested several spots on the bed before settling into the exact same position she had always preferred, right against Lisa's left side in the curve of her waist. As Pixel began her contented purring, Lisa felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. They had successfully transplanted their perfect little world to a new location without losing any of the comfort and connection that made it special. The new apartment brought unexpected visitors who got to witness their bedtime routine firsthand. Lisa's mother came to stay for a week and was amazed by the elaborate process she observed each evening. "I've never seen anything like this," her mother said, watching Pixel conduct her pre-sleep inspection. "It's like she's running a small hotel and you're her most important guest." Lisa's neighbor from down the hall, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, became a regular visitor and was particularly charmed by Pixel's sleeping habits. "In my country, we believe that animals can sense what humans need," she told Lisa one afternoon. "Your little one, she knows you need the closeness. She's taking care of you as much as you're taking care of her." That observation stayed with Lisa for a long time. She had spent so much time thinking about how she was accommodating Pixel's needs that she hadn't fully appreciated how perfectly Pixel was meeting her own needs in return. The physical comfort, the reliable routine, the sense of being cared for, these were all things Lisa hadn't even realized she was missing until Pixel provided them. As the months passed in their new home, Lisa found herself becoming something of an advocate for the benefits of sharing your sleeping space with the right companion. When friends complained about feeling restless or having trouble winding down at night, Lisa would find herself suggesting they consider the calming effects of a purring cat. When her sister Amy went through a difficult divorce and talked about feeling lonely in her big empty house, Lisa encouraged her to visit the local animal shelter. "I'm not saying everyone needs a cat," Lisa would explain, "but there's something powerful about having another living creature who depends on you to create a safe, comfortable space. It makes you more intentional about rest, more aware of what actually helps you relax." The advice wasn't just theoretical for Lisa. Every night, as she went through the now automatic process of arranging herself in exactly the right position for Pixel's comfort, she was also creating the perfect conditions for her own best sleep. The routine had taught her to pay attention to temperature, to the comfort of her bedding, to the importance of consistent timing, and to the profound value of physical closeness and connection. 3 years after that rainy night when she found a tiny kitten behind the dumpster, Lisa had built a life that was centered around mutual care and comfort. Her business was thriving, partly because she was sleeping better and managing stress more effectively. Her relationships with friends and family had deepened, influenced by the lessons about connection and interdependence that Pixel had taught her. Most importantly, Lisa had learned that the best spaces in life aren't measured by how much room they have, but by how much love they contain. Their queen-size bed wasn't too small or too big. It was exactly the perfect size for two beings who had figured out how to take care of each other in all the ways that truly mattered. Every night, as Pixel settled into her chosen spot with that familiar, contented purr, she seemed to be saying the same thing she had been communicating from the very beginning. Some spaces are too big and empty when you're in them alone, but become exactly right when they're shared with someone who truly understands what you need.